What if EXCADRILL was in Gen 1 OU? Now, fun fact, I was originally going to do Alone Sand Splash today. I had, I made, the team and everything. I was getting ready to start, working on replays. But then, the Showdown server needed to, reload. So, I figured I'd just do it later. And then that's when I saw the Gen 9 viability rankings. And poor EXCADRILL went to UU. And also, Wanderers managed to make a comeback. So, good for him. I don't really care about Gen 9. So, I figured, you know what? EXCADRILL is a popular requested Pokemon as well. Very strong. I'm sure just like Tyranitar and Garchomp, a lot of people were sad and maybe even shocked that he dropped. But I'm pretty sure he also dropped in Gen 8 as well. So this isn't that much of a surprise. Just like how it won't be much of a surprise to let you know that a ground and steel type with good attacking stats, yeah, that's probably going to be good in Gen 1. I don't know about you. One of my first ever videos was Iron Trends, and that was the first time I realized, wow, a steel ground type is just a better rock ground type, which is what Rhydon is, and Rhydon is spectacular. So, you would think EXCADRILL would just be a superior version of that. And here's the weird part. In execution, both work very differently. And that's because EXCADRILL has a very damning base 60 defense stat. And while he has a high HP stat, you would be surprised just how much that becomes irrelevant. But as soon as you see the replays, you're gonna be like, wow, this guy, he might have a steel type, but he is just not bulky like how Rhydon is. But on the other hand, with that 65 special defense, not to mention he has a resistance to psychic alongside normal, he ends up being a better special tank than a physical one, which is weird and unexpected. But I do think I'm kind of glad, because if I ever put this guy in a future generation jumble, Convex was talking to me about this earlier today, and he was talking about how, well, it seems kind of boring to add, because he'll just be a better Rhydon. And he's not. He might not be as physically defensive, but he has a little bit more attack with 135. With that speed stat, he's faster than Cloyster, and just in general, a pretty fast Pokemon. Has a pretty good crit rate as well. And his move pool, I would say, is definitely better than Rhydon's. Which is saying a lot, because Rhydon has pretty much everything he can ever need. Now, obviously, you have Earthquake. I honestly forget if Drill Run is a signature move or not. If it is, and if it's just a ground type slash, obviously that fundamentally changes just how good EXCADRILL is. I almost said Great Tusk, because that's basically what Great Tusk was in Generation Jumble. We gave him Headlong Rush, so if you have just a really, really strong ground move, obviously it just makes him so much better, but also kind of boring, if I do say so myself. More so with EXCADRILL than with Great Tusk, because at least Great Tusk is much worse defensively, type-wise. But yeah, don't expect any Drill Run for the video. I just stuck with Earthquake, because it's just good enough. Rock Slide, good for Zapdos, and technically Cloyster. And here's the main thing that makes EXCADRILL stand out. Swords Dance. This is huge. And also with Substitute, it's another one of those Pokemon where if you form a Substitute, it needs 2 Science Responses to break it, which, as you can imagine, is a pretty big deal. And obviously has Hyper Beam, which I don't think surprises anybody. So Earthquake, Swords Dance, and then I would say Rock Slide probably as always your third move. And the last one can either be Hyper Beam or Substitute. I think that personally, Hyper Beam is better, because mostly for Executor, because as you can imagine, Executor putting you to sleep, pretty annoying. But I think you need Hyper Beam to really the only thing that you can really do to like really do a lot of damage to it. You don't really get that with like a Sword Stance boosted Rock Slide, and certainly not with Earthquake. Not to mention Chansey really fears you anyways, because you're super fast, and even if it's Reflect Chansey, with Sword Stance you don't care. Chansey can't paralyze you. So just, in general, I just think this is the right thing. Same with Gengar. Gengar wouldn't dare waste a Hypnosis or a Nightshade on you, because of how tanky you are, so it's not staying in. So you might as well just have more coverage, so that you can just do better against, like, you know, the things that can actually sort of threaten you. But I think that's about it, so let's just get into the replays. I was originally going to have 2 replays with Tauros, one with Earthquake and one with Fire Blast. As you can see there, yeah, Tauros, he does not need it. He does not need Fire Blast to beat EXCADRILL. Like, holy crap, I did not see this coming. I didn't expect Earthquake to do, like, so little damage. And I definitely didn't expect EXCADRILL to go down so easily. I could have sworn he had better defense, but whatever. With Snorlax, it really just depends on what set you're using. But any set with Earthquake does about as much as Tauros' Earthquake. So you can't really afford to set up on Sword Stances, unless you know for a fact that Snorlax doesn't have Earthquake. Against pretty much every other set, EXCADRILL like does really, really well. But yeah, it's could go either way, technically. Even if, like, realistically, most Snorlaxes you kind of wall. And speaking of walling, Chansey can just do absolutely nothing to you. You do not care about Reflect. Even if you did have Sword Stance, your crit rate is good enough to where you can just brute force it anyways. So it's about like pretty even between the big 3. You have like a bad matchup's good. It's like pretty even, I would say. And then that's about like where the worst really ends for EXCADRILL. Because as you can see here, here's where EXCADRILL like is at its like strongest against like a Psychic type, because then they can easily soak up the Psychics, set up a Sword Stance, and if they set up a Sword Stance, you better believe Alakazam or anything doesn't want to switch into that. Even Cloyster, like if you get one Sword Stance up, does like really bad. So, not what I would have expected, but I guess it makes sense. And Exeggutor is weird, because you only have Mega Drain, which you're probably not going to use anyways. Double Edge is just, like, it's just hilarious using that on EXCADRILL. So for the most part, you just have 2 Pokemon that don't really have any good ways of hurting each other unboosted. Or for Exeggutor's case, without any special drops. So Exeggutor doesn't care too much about the sleep. Like, it'll probably wake up in time, but it's still a could go either way, just because with sleep, pretty much anything becomes both winnable or unwinnable, depending on how you look at it. So next off, we have, I think Cloyster? Yeah. You're faster, which is the only reason I'm gonna say it's not unwinnable. I'm gonna say it's a pretty bad matchup, because even with Sword Stance, like, you still have to 2-hit KO Cloyster, so it's very, very dangerous. And if you don't have a Sword Stance up, you have to rely on crits. And just in general, I think most of the time, the matchup's probably going to be in Cloyster's favor. EXCADRILL can put some damage in, don't get me wrong, but it's not good. But even with the Sword Stance, I would be very terrified that the Cloyster gets a crit clamp. And then Jinx, faster, which is really unfortunate. And with Blizzard, it can hit really hard either way. Even if there's already another Pokemon to sweep, it's still a big threat to you. So it's like the one Psychic type you can't really do much against. And then the Rhydon matchup, holy crap. Look at that. Rhydon, I think, is just in a damage range to OHKO you. So, yeah, there's definitely a 0% chance that EXCADRILL can just replace Rhydon. That is definitely not happening at all. But I'm kind of glad, which I think I already said that. And then Swellow is unwinnable. With one Sword Stance, you can technically 2-shot it, But when are you ever gonna get that opportunity against a Slowbro? Like, they're not gonna send a Slowbro in if, like, you already have a Sword Stance up. And if they do, who knows? Maybe Surf just already KOs on its own. I don't know for sure. But last but not least, we're gonna go with Starmie, because you guys don't really need to see Zapdos get utterly humiliated. And for most of Starmie's offensive arsenal, Blizzard, Psychic, Thunderbolt, it does like Jack to Excadrill. So Excadrill has like no problem just taking out Starmie whatsoever. Sure, you have the occasional set with Surf, but that's relatively uncommon. So, and also not to mention, I don't think it's very worth it just for Excadrill alone. But it really just depends on the format and the metagame. But here is the tier list. Now for... Oh wait, this is supposed to be a bad matchup. My apologies. But for how, like, frail Excadrill looked in some of those replays, you would not tell that from this tier list. Because some things I didn't bother showing, like, you know, the electric types and Gengar. Oh, like... Oh wait, that's also supposed to be here. This is supposed to be that winnable one. I don't know what Slowbro was doing in great matchups. But either way, yeah, like... It's still, like, a phenomenal Pokemon. And... while it does suffer from the things down here, the stuff that has a great matchup against, it has a really good matchup against. Not to... Oh wait, this is also supposed to be... Man, what is with me? This is actually a pretty bad tier list. I should have looked over this beforehand. I do not know what I was thinking. But... yeah, I don't have much else to say. Other than that, next time I will definitely look at the tier list again before recording. But what do you think? Do you think Excadrill will be better than Rhydon? Or do you think Rhydon would still be the superior ground type? I'm personally leaning towards... Okay, here's what I'm going to say about most good ground types that you put in Gen 1 OU. Some, like Excadrill, might be better. But I'm going to say that Rhydon is almost always going to be the more consistent one. That's what I had to say about Great Tusk as well, in the Generation Jumbo Season 1. Even though with Headlong Rush, especially with a crit, he can basically outco everything. With his typing, he just is so frail that even though I put both of them in the same tier, I would say Rhydon's more consistent. And I think it's going to be really hard to find a ground type that's truly better. I'll have to look over Iron Trends one day to see if that's better. Which, I'm pretty sure it's well-rounded stats, so maybe. But who knows? Alolan Slancelot is probably going to be tomorrow since I already have everything set up for it. And that should be fun. So, thank y'all for watching. This is Groundback. And until next time, I look forward to hearing from you. Also join the Discord server.